right. So in the Harbaugh Bowl, John Harbaugh and the Baltimore Ravens come out on top, a 30-23 victory over the Los Angeles Chargers. The Baltimore Ravens advance to 8-4, whereas the Los Angeles Chargers fall to 7-4. Both Harbaugh brothers got teams on the brink of the playoffs, on the brink of postseason. But I think that this game showed the difference in expectations and really ceiling for these teams as it pertains to this season. Obviously, we saw the Derrick Henry addition show itself in this game. Again, 24 carries, 140 yards, 5.8 yards per carry. Couldn't find the end zone this week. Cost me in fantasy. I'm heartbroken, but life goes on. You know, the Derrick Henry and the Saquon Barkley signings, you can't overstate just how important they've been to their team, and throw Josh Jacobs in there too. I've gone on and on about this for weeks now, but the running back position was just so drastically undervalued this offseason, where you had every wide receiver and their brother getting $20-25 million a year on their extensions. Meanwhile, the Baltimore Ravens are able to go get a guy like Derrick Henry for $8 million a year. Saquon, the high end running back, got $13 million a year. And the amount of production and consistent touches these guys get, it'll just never fail to amaze me why the guy who touches the ball in your offense, the second most behind the quarterback, is valued less than your wide receiver 2 or 3 in some cases. Derrick Henry, again, 24 carries tonight, 24 touches. Lamar only attempted 22 passes. Like, that is the discrepancy. Derrick Henry was the feature offensive player more than Lamar Jackson was throwing in this game, in which the Ravens put up 30 points. And, you know, the 23 points given up is a little misleading because obviously they allowed kind of the backdoor touchdown at the end of the game there. But Baltimore's defense, man, don't let them catch on, because the way that I've been viewing the AFC, and I think a lot of people just conventionally have, it's Kansas City and Buffalo are like, that's going to be the AFC Championship. Everybody's kind of assuming that. Baltimore's defense, the last couple weeks, man, it is starting to catch on. Zach Gore's defense is starting to catch on. Obviously, that Bengals game was kind of a bit of an outlier, but, you know, 3 of the last 4 weeks, 10 points allowed to the Broncos, who we've seen have been rolling. Only allow 18 to the Steelers, not a single touchdown. 23 tonight, but in reality, that was 16. Like, the Baltimore Ravens defense is coming along. And is it going to be as good as it was last year? No shot. It's not going to get to that level. You lost too much talent in Patrick Queen and, you know, Jadeveon Clowney and Geno Stone, who led your team in interceptions last year. Like, you lost a ton of production. But at the same time, Roquan Smith, who was out tonight, mind you, and the defense still played pretty good. You know, Matabuke, Kyle Hamilton, Marlon Humphrey, like, they're still star pieces at a lot of different levels of this defense. And it doesn't need to be as good as it was last year. If you remember the Baltimore Ravens last year, like, they felt a lot like the Detroit Lions do this year. Like, who's going to stop this team? They're the clear-cut favorites. They're the best team. And then they got bounced in the championship game. The Ravens don't need to feel head and shoulders above everybody else to be successful in the postseason. If your defense can be middle of the pack, because it just can't cost you games. It was costing them, or really hurting them in games earlier this season. Like, the defense cost them that Raiders game earlier this year. But the defense plays at this level, mind you, with probably the most efficient, if not top 5, top 3 efficient offense in the NFL, with the 2-time MVP, Lamar Jackson, who's a freaking weapon at quarterback, Derrick Henry at running back, who, if it wasn't for the year Saquon's having, and maybe even still might be offensive player of the year, Zay Flowers a real threat, Mark Andrews, who, you know, he scores like a touchdown every week, it feels like. Like, this Ravens team can compete. We watched them earlier this year compete with Buffalo at a high level and really disrupt them. And Kansas City, clearly vulnerable. If I knew that the Ravens defense would be like this the rest of the way, I'd for sure throw them up there with Kansas City and with Buffalo, because they're just too good offensively. Like, they are better offensively than Buffalo and Kansas City over the course of the season. It's the defense that's been the concern. And Justin Tucker, oddly enough, but He was solid tonight. There are some question marks with Baltimore that there wasn't last year. But, you know, I don't know if there's a team in the NFL right now that doesn't have question marks. Detroit, it's Campbell's game management, and do you trust Goff to go on the road if he needs to in a playoff game? Eagles, Sirianni, Chiefs, offensive production, Bills, can they win the big game? Baltimore, defense, can Lamar win the big? Like, there's a lot of parity right now. But if Baltimore can get this defense going over the next month and a half, yeah, that'll be huge. And, you know, it's not to say that the Chargers have one of the more impressive offenses in the NFL, but they had been rolling. And Baltimore put a stop to that tonight. The Ravens are legit in the mix, I think, for Super Bowl contending teams. Lamar has a quiet night, 177 yards, 3 total touchdowns, a 126.5 passer rating. You know, he's in the MVP conversation for sure. I think Saquon and Josh Allen are ahead of him at the moment, but Lamar's in that top 3. And the Ravens need to be taken seriously. When it comes to the Chargers, I thought this game perfectly cemented exactly where they're at. Yeah, they're about within a touchdown of a true Super Bowl contender. They're about, you know, this close to Baltimore. They have an elite quarterback in Justin Herbert who could really zip that ball. I think in terms of just pure thrower of the football, Herbert might be top 3 in football. You know, Mahomes, Stafford, Herbert. In terms of just consistently the tight spiral, I really like Justin Herbert. The run game, hopefully Dobbins is all right, but it's solid. It's manageable, especially with the Greg Roman offense. Gus Bus and Dobbins are a good duo. McConkey really coming along well. Very nice rookie weapon. But the offense is missing an alpha X wide receiver that closes the gap in these 7-point games. McConkey's cool. They need a guy that they can depend on. How many times tonight did we see a Quentin Johnston drop or a ball that could have maybe been catched, but Josh Palmer just isn't that alpha guy to come down with it? You know, the Chargers have cap space this offseason. If they go pay a T. Higgins, like, watch the fuck out, because the Chargers will say, hello, we are here and we have entered the Super Bowl conversation. Because the defense has been excellent. You know, Baltimore kind of pretty much hangs 4 touchdowns on everybody they play. I get it, they give up 30 tonight. But aside from that, you know, this team's allowing less than 15 points per game to their opponent. The defense has been excellent. You have players, you know, Mack and Bosa. You have a real edge rush. Derwin James, Asante Samuel Jr. at corner. It's not a perfect defense, but it's a good to great defense depending on who they're facing. You have what some would consider a top 5 quarterback in the sport, what some would consider a top 5 head coach in the sport, great coordinators, a real run game, a real slot threat in McConkey, a decent tight end in Disley. You add a true alpha wide receiver to this team, a true X, a guy on the outside who, you know, hey, fuck it, blank is down there, and he can come down with a 50-50 ball. Like, the Chargers are legit. And the Chargers are going to be a playoff team this year. And they very well have the ability, I think, to upset a team or two. Like, if you told me the Chargers got to the AFC Championship, I'd say, you know what? Harbaugh and Herbert, top 5 head coach quarterback combo, a good defense, and maybe the run game was rolling, cold weather games get tighter. Like, I'd believe you. And if I'm, you know, Houston, Pittsburgh, maybe Baltimore comes back and wins that division. Kansas City, if they slip up, like, I don't want to see the Chargers as a wild card opponent. I would rather play Pittsburgh or Denver. Because when you look across the other side of that field at the Chargers, they got a quarterback that on any given day could play up to the level of your quarterback. You know, when we're being realistic, if you're the Chiefs and you have Mahomes and the other side's got Russell Wilson, like, you know that there's a clear advantage. On any given Sunday, Justin Herbert could outplay Patrick Mahomes. It's not to say that he's better than him, but he could go toe-to-toe with him. The Chargers are dangerous. Like, I don't want to face them this year. Because while I don't think they have the ability to go win it all, they certainly have the ability to play spoiler for somebody else. But the Chargers are on a way faster track than I thought they'd be. I thought this was a team that was going to be 9-8 and sneak into a 7 seed. Instead, it feels like they're going to cruise into the playoffs at 10, 11 wins and potentially upset somebody in round 1. And I wouldn't even put it past them to do it a second time in round 2. And by next year, Chargers could be Super Bowl, a Super Bowl contender. Hell, they could win it. So if you're a Chargers fan, keep your head up. If you're a Ravens fan, Lamar and Derrick Henry do their thing. The defense is looking better. You're a win over the Eagles away from people really respecting you and throwing you in that conversation with Buffalo and Kansas City like they did at the start of the season. But those are my thoughts on this Monday Night Football game. The Harbaugh Bowl goes to John Harbaugh. The Ravens win 30-23. If you love the NFL, make sure you sub to the channel, hit the like button. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.